what you've already decided.
But chair's called a toilet?
I was going to ask. Yeah.
First he thought of the wild.
You know, I was thinking one thing with these projects, they're all designed to teach you something. One trick that they never tell you to do in school is take a look at the project and try to understand what they're trying to teach you. If you can understand that you know, you're trying to integrate, you know, these planes, these rhythms, these cadences, you know, that's what they're getting at, is how are you going about integrating them? How do you show everybody that you've integrated them? And then, what's your own method? And that's what you're supposed to learn from it, is take away from this, oh, this is how I want to work, and oh, this is how I don't want to work. Whatever, that's the lesson. So if you can go into a project with that in mind at first, you can plan for it, or at least understand what you're doing. I think that's a trick that no one ever seems to tell you, but that's what the point is, right? Okay, well, who came up with this stupid project? Well, they've got a reason for it, and if you can be smart enough to figure it out, go along for it. Just a thought. Didn't work for me. But it is how you have to apply it to real life in a lot of ways. You know, your client will come to you with a problem, and you have to make it better than what they've asked for. That's the trick. You have to figure out, well, what do they really need? And sometimes you fail miserably. Hopefully.
Well, just as an aside, I think I see that we're struggling with the idea of the vista. That it seems, as you talked about the project, really anything with a vista. And I think we have to work a bit more on the next project.
I think one of the difficulties, let me just try and figure out how to put this without sounding too harsh. One of the difficulties that's come into architectural education since the 1950s, it's been a struggle for people to find new words to talk about other stuff. Okay? And Vista talks about a thing that's called view. And view talks about a thing that used to be called prospect. And prospect talked about something that was older than that. But the whole notion, again, of a vista is kind of something that frames something that you want to look at. Okay? That's what a view is. It's not looking out there and saying, my, that's a wonderful view. It's really not. One's looking at particular pieces of it as you look at it. And so, again, I think one of the things you can challenge yourself to do when you have a word like cadence is to say, what is it really about? It's about repetition that we heard earlier, but it's also about a very old thing called rhythm, and it's about, beyond that, a thing called eurythmy, which is one of the first principles of classical architecture that you read in Cadenz's book. So it's an old idea that just has a different name. And so if you want to find out more about cadence, you need to switch and not try and look up cadence, because most of the literature is going to be in other places. Okay? And for almost everything you deal with, there's an older word that actually gives you more access to some of the ideas that are not quite as current. And it's a thing we all do. We all love to kind of come up with. Louis Kahn's famous, for inventing words. He talked about things that were darkless and lightless. And he was supposed to figure out what is darkness and what is lightless, and things like that. And again, when as Patricia says, you have to deal with that, it's always good to go back as far as you can and look it up in the dictionary and look what its antecedents were until you get back to an original meaning. And that way, you get a clearer idea of what it is you need.
Within the parameters of the But one thing that we do at the beginning, which I think tends to get overlooked, is we ask you to read about this, and then I ask you to go back and say, what does it mean to you? Because over and over the jury said, well, what do you mean by markers? What do you mean by whatever? And so you have to get that settled in your own mind, or you're going to have a very tough time explaining it to somebody else.
That's something you have to learn how to do in the professional world too, when you're talking to people that don't necessarily use architecture speak all the time. You got to break it down. I think, like I used to work in sales, and if you can explain your project to a 5-year-old and they can understand it, then you've done a successful job. If you can't,
I always use my mother. Your mother can understand. She's got it.
My son is in the 4-year program in Boulder, and he's double majoring in philosophy. And he's doing, he's now 3,000 level in philosophy, and he walks in every Monday and Wednesday and says, I have a question to ask you. And, some of those really are taxing kind of questions, but it's all about language. It's all about what does this word mean in relation to what designers or architects kind of do. And so this is, you've got to be able to kind of get to a place where you could talk to Patricia's mother about it, and she'll understand you. Or might not.
Well, thanks for all your work.
Thank you so much.
That was
You really
it's great to come in.
did a great job.